The brave firefighter Max.
It was a sunny day in the small town of Fireville. The birds were chirping happily, and the flowers were blooming in the gardens. Children were playing on the streets, looking forward to the day ahead. But suddenly, a loud siren blared. "That's the fire department siren," exclaimed Lena excitedly. She ran to her friends, Tom and Lisa. "Let's hurry to the fire station and see what's happening." The three children sprinted to the fire station, where they saw the brave firefighter Max in his uniform. "What's going on, firefighter Max?" asked Tom excitedly. Max replied calmly, "There's a fire in the forest near the town park. We need to get there right away to put out the fire and make sure no one is in danger." The children looked concerned, but they knew Max would do everything to protect them and the others in town. They nodded and said, "We'll accompany you, firefighter Max." Together, they climbed into the fire truck and raced to the town park. When they arrived, they saw smoke rising from the trees, and the crackling of the flames sounded menacing. Max put on his helmet and breathing mask, explaining to the children, "You stay here in safety while I extinguish the fire. I'll make sure no one gets hurt." The children watched in awe as Max and his team bravely fought against the fire. They sprayed water from the hoses and worked hard to smother the flames. It was impressive to see how well they worked together. Finally, after a long and exhausting effort, they managed to bring the fire under control and put it out. Max returned to the children, who greeted him with applause. "You really are the best firefighter, Max," said Lisa, smiling. Max smiled back and replied, "Thank you. But the most important thing is that we're all safe. We should always be cautious and aware of our surroundings to prevent fires." The children nodded in agreement. They had learned a lot about fire and safety, and were grateful for the courageous work of firefighter Max and his team. In the following weeks, the children often visited the fire station to learn more about the fire department and safety. They learned how to use a fire extinguisher and how important smoke detectors are in their homes. One day, Lena asked, "Firefighter Max, can we ride with you in the fire truck just once?" Max laughed and said, "Of course you can. Tomorrow, we'll take a little ride around town to show you how we're always ready to help in emergencies." The children could hardly sleep from excitement. The next morning, They met early at the fire station, and Max invited them into the fire truck. The sirens wailed as they drove through town, and people waved at them. It was an exciting adventure to see the town from firefighter Max's perspective. The children were so proud to be part of his team, even if it was just for a day. After the ride, they returned to the fire station, where Max told them more about the fire department. He explained how important it is to stay calm and call for help if you discover a fire, and how crucial it is to have an escape plan in case you're ever in danger. The children nodded and promised to always be careful and follow safety rules. They now knew that firefighter Max and his team were always there to protect them and teach them the importance of safety. With time, Tom, Lisa, and Lena became little fire safety ambassadors in their town. They shared everything they had learned about fire and safety with their friends and families, encouraging everyone to be aware and stay safe. And so they lived happily and safely in the town of Fireville, knowing that the brave firefighter Max and his team were always there to protect them and teach them how important it is to be cautious and prioritize safety.
The courageous policeman Paul.
In the small town of Hillsville lived a policeman named Paul. He was known for his bravery and kindness. Paul wasn't particularly tall, but he had a big heart and always had a smile on his face. Every day, he proudly wore his police uniform and hat, feeling honored to protect the people in his town. One sunny morning, as Paul was patrolling, he heard excited voices in the distance. He followed the noise and arrived at a playground where children were running around in a frenzy. "What's happened?" asked Paul as he hurried over to the children. A little girl named Emma ran up to him and exclaimed, "Our kitten Whiskers climbed up a tree and now it won't come down. Please, Policeman Paul, can you help us?" Paul smiled reassuringly and said, "Of course I'll help you kids." Let's work together to get Whiskers down safely. Together with the children, Paul looked for a way to rescue the kitten from the tree. He found a ladder in a nearby shed and leaned it against the tree. Carefully, he climbed up, and once he was at the top, he reached out to comfort Whiskers. "Don't worry, little Whiskers. I'll bring you down safely," Paul said gently, as he carefully scooped up the trembling kitten in his arms. The children clapped in joy as Paul descended from the tree and returned Whiskers to them. Emma hugged her kitten and looked up at Paul with gratitude. "Thank you, Policeman Paul. You're the best," she exclaimed happily. Paul laughed and replied, It was my pleasure to help." The children nodded and thanked him again before happily returning to their play. On that day, Paul not only saved a kitten, but also won the hearts of the children. From that moment on, they called him Policeman Paul, our hero. Days went by, and Paul continued his work as a policeman in Hillsville. He helped people in times of need, resolved conflicts, and ensured the streets were safe. The people in town respected and cherished him greatly. One day, Paul received a call from the school. There was an issue that required his attention. When he arrived at the school, he saw that there had been a water leak, and the youngest student's classroom was flooded. The children stood in front of their drenched classroom, looking sad. Paul knew he had to help. He called a plumber to fix the leak, and then started removing the water with buckets and mops. The children eagerly helped him, even laughing and singing as they worked to clear the water. Paul admired their bravery and cheerfulness despite the mishap. Eventually, the classroom was dry and ready for use again. The children hugged Paul and thanked him warmly. They called him Policeman Paul, our Savior. Paul smiled and said, "You are all so brave and strong." The children smiled back and promised to always study hard and support each other. Another exciting adventure unfolded when Paul received an invitation from the local elementary school. They wanted him to talk to the children about his work as a policeman and show them the police station. Paul was thrilled by the invitation and prepared a special presentation. He explained to the children how important it was to follow rules, be respectful, and how the police could help them in emergencies. The children were excited to visit the police station and see the police vehicles. Paul even showed them how the sirens and lights worked and let them sit in the police car. The children were impressed and asked many questions. Paul patiently answered each one and encouraged the children never to be afraid to seek help from the police if they ever felt unsure or in danger. The children bid farewell to Paul and thanked him warmly for his visit. They called him Policeman Paul, our friend and protector. Paul was overjoyed to inspire the children in this way. He knew they were the future and that it was important to guide them in the right direction. Time passed, and Paul remained a beloved policeman in Hillsville. He continued to help people in both good and bad times, and the children loved having him as their friend and protector. One day, as Paul was on patrol again, he saw a boy named Timmy sitting alone on a park bench, crying. Paul approached him and asked gently, "What's wrong, Timmy?" Timmy wiped away his tears and said, "I've lost my wallet, and it had my allowance for the whole week in it." Paul sat down next to Timmy and comforted him. He promised to help him search for his wallet. Together, they combed the park and looked everywhere for the lost wallet. Finally, they found it under a bush, and Timmy beamed with joy. He hugged Paul gratefully and said, "You're the best policeman in the world, Policeman Paul."